Have you ever wondered what your life would look like if fear didn't hold you back? What dreams would you chase? What risks would you take if the fear of failure, rejection, or pain didn't paralyze you? What if fear isn't the enemy, but the energy? What if the very thing you're avoiding is the path that leads to your growth? Today, we're diving deep into how to turn fear into fuel through the ancient wisdom of Stoicism and the unshakable mindset of self-mastery. If you're serious about breaking through mental barriers and living boldly, subscribe now, because this channel is all about helping you rise above fear, become resilient, and take full ownership of your life. 1. Understanding the root of fear. Fear doesn't come from the world, it comes from within. It's not the height that scares us, it's our imagined fall. Not the unknown itself, but our narrative about what could go wrong. We often believe we are reacting to events, but what we are really reacting to is our interpretation of those events. The mountain doesn't move. The job interview doesn't bite. The conversation with a loved one doesn't inherently cause panic. It's the internal story, the assumptions we've built about potential outcomes, judgments, or failures that give rise to the dread we feel. In this way, fear becomes a mirror, reflecting our deepest insecurities and our most tightly held attachments. Stoics like Seneca reminded us that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Fear often stems from assumptions, expectations, and attachments, things we think we need to control. We imagine worst-case scenarios, layering anxiety on top of uncertainty until the mental construct becomes more painful than any reality we're likely to face. The Stoics trained themselves to see through this illusion. They practiced premeditatio malorum, imagining possible misfortunes not to worry more, but to free themselves from the grip of surprise and panic. In doing so, they understood a powerful truth. Fear grows in the absence of rational inspection. It feeds on avoidance, not clarity. The root of fear is our resistance to discomfort. We want certainty in an uncertain world, and when we don't get it, fear rushes in to protect us from pain. But that protection often becomes a prison. We avoid risks, stay in relationships we've outgrown, turn down opportunities, or silence our voices, not because the world is so dangerous, but because we've allowed fear to masquerade as wisdom. It whispers that safety is peace, when in reality, it's often stagnation. We forget that growth is inherently uncomfortable. The Stoics didn't view discomfort as a problem, they saw it as a crucible for transformation. By becoming aware of your fear, not as a flaw, but as a teacher, you reclaim your power. You start to see fear not as something to avoid, but as a compass, pointing you toward what matters most. Where there is fear, there is often value. You fear speaking your truth because it matters. You fear failure because the goal is meaningful. Instead of turning away, turn toward your fear with curiosity. Ask what it's trying to protect. Challenge whether that protection is helping you grow or keeping you small. This awareness creates choice, and in choice, we find liberation.
2. Courage is built through action. You don't wait for courage to arrive. You create it by doing the thing you're scared of. Courage is not a feeling. It's a decision followed by motion. Too many wait for the fear to pass before they act, not realizing that action is the very thing that transforms fear into strength. The truth is, you will likely never feel ready, but readiness is overrated. What matters is your willingness to step forward, heart pounding, breath shallow, and do it anyway. That's where real bravery is forged, not in theory, but in motion. Stoicism teaches that bravery isn't about being fearless. It's about moving forward despite fear. The Stoic hero isn't a person who feels no fear, but one who chooses to act in alignment with virtue regardless of it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." This is moral clarity in the face of emotional noise. Courage is a commitment to what is right, even when it's uncomfortable. You don't eliminate fear before you act. You subordinate it to your higher principles. Each time you take a small step through fear, you build a bridge between who you are and who you're becoming. Action dissolves fear's illusion. Waiting feeds it. What we often call fear is really resistance, the friction between your comfort zone and your growth. Every courageous act, no matter how small, chips away at that wall. And every time you do the thing anyway, you prove to yourself that you can. This proof accumulates. It becomes your new foundation. The next time you face a challenge, your past bravery becomes a map forward. Courage is a muscle. Train it. Use it. Stretch it. Even when your voice shakes, speak. Even when your hands tremble, act. That's how confidence is born. Not before the fear, but through it. Confidence is not the absence of fear. It's the result of having faced fear and survived. The more you act in spite of fear, the less power it holds over you. You begin to realize that fear is not a stop sign, it's a signal that something matters, a signal that you're alive. And the more you respond with action, the more your life opens up to possibility.
3. Reframing emotion, turning fear into fuel. Fear can freeze you or fuel you. The difference is in how you interpret it. What you label as fear might actually be anticipation, growth, or a readiness to evolve, if you allow your perspective to shift. Your interpretation determines whether you see fear as a red light or a green light. It's not just about what you feel, but what that feeling means to you. The Stoics understood this deeply. They didn't try to kill emotion, they sought to reframe it, to place it in service of virtue rather than vice. Stoics practiced emotional reframing, choosing a different perspective in the face of adversity. They understood that fear is information, not fate. It tells you where your edge is, and your edge is where growth lives. The discomfort you feel before a big decision or a vulnerable conversation isn't a sign to retreat. It's a sign you're standing at the threshold of expansion. Seneca said, "He who is brave is free." But that freedom isn't won by avoidance. It's won by stepping into the fear and seeing it as a teacher rather than a threat. Instead of saying, "I'm afraid," try saying, "I'm excited." Your body's response is often the same: elevated heart rate, sweaty palms, quick breath, but your mind decides whether you run or rise. The physiological experience of fear and excitement is nearly identical. It's the story you tell yourself that creates the difference. When you interpret the sensation as fear, you shrink. When you interpret it as excitement, you rise. This simple shift in language can be powerful. It reframes the experience from danger to opportunity, from paralysis to potential. By embracing fear as a sign that you're leveling up, you rewrite the narrative. You're not avoiding danger, you're leaning into challenge. And with each challenge faced, fear loses its grip and purpose takes its place. The goal is not to eradicate fear, but to harness it, to transmute it into fuel for your highest aims. When fear shows up, it means you're moving towards something meaningful. Welcome it. Use it. Let it sharpen your focus and ignite your will. Because on the other side of fear isn't just relief, it's revelation. A clearer, stronger, freer version of yourself waiting to be discovered. 4. Taking risks the Stoic way. Taking risks isn't about recklessness, it's about calculated courage. The Stoics believed in preparing the mind for worst-case scenarios, not to live in fear, but to break its hold. Risk, in Stoicism, isn't framed as blind leaps into the unknown, but as a thoughtful confrontation with what must be done, despite uncertainty. Seneca reminded us that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. When we choose not to take a risk out of fear, we often inflate the consequences beyond recognition. The Stoic way is not to avoid fear, but to dissect it, understand it, and move forward with it in tow. Not paralyzed, but clear-eyed. The practice of premeditation malorum, imagining the worst, wasn't pessimistic, it was empowering. When you mentally face your fears, they shrink. When you understand the price of an action, you stop playing small. This mental rehearsal isn't a surrender to defeat, it's a rehearsal for resilience. You imagine what could go wrong, not to dwell on disaster, but to realize that even the worst-case scenario is survivable. And if it's survivable, it's no longer a rational reason to hold yourself back. The Stoic doesn't wait for certainty, they train for chaos. They visualize failure, embarrassment, and rejection, not to become fatalistic, but to rob those outcomes of their emotional power. Don't wait for perfect timing, it doesn't exist, but don't leap blindly either. Reflect, prepare, then leap with intention. Stoicism doesn't mean inaction through overthinking, nor does it glorify impulsivity. There is a middle ground, an inner stillness that comes from clarity of thought and acceptance of risk. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." That quote is not a death sentence, it's a wake-up call. If life is unpredictable and finite, the time to act is always now. But act with integrity, strategy, and awareness. A Stoic leap is rooted in understanding the terrain, not waiting for it to be flat and safe, but learning how to climb. Ask yourself, what's the cost of staying where I am? What's the upside of stepping forward? Fear will always be part of the equation, but so is growth. Choose growth. Remaining stagnant is a decision, a costly one. Every risk avoided is an opportunity declined, a lesson delayed, a life unlived. The Stoic doesn't just ask, "What if I fail?" but also, "What if I never try?" Living cautiously may protect you from discomfort, but it also shelters you from evolution. The question isn't whether you'll feel fear, the question is whether you'll let it dictate your direction. The Stoic answer is no. Risk, when paired with reason and virtue, becomes the path, not the obstacle.
5. Living boldly, fearlessly aligned with your values. To live boldly means to live aligned with your values, aligned with your truth. Fear loses power when your mission becomes bigger than your insecurities. The Stoics believed in living according to nature, which meant living in harmony with your highest principles, not with your fleeting emotions. When your actions are dictated by virtue rather than fear, you don't need external validation. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop hesitating. The bold life isn't about drama or ego, it's about integrity. Choosing the hard right over the easy wrong, even when no one is watching. A Stoic life is not timid, it is fearless. Not because it avoids pain, but because it understands that pain can be meaningful. Pain with purpose is transformation. Epictetus, born into slavery and eventually becoming one of the most influential Stoic teachers, didn't rise by avoiding hardship, he embraced it as training. He saw discomfort as a forge for character, not a sign to retreat. Living boldly means redefining your relationship with pain, not as a punishment, but as a mentor. Pain tests the depth of your convictions. When you live in alignment with virtue, even pain becomes a tool, not a threat. Living boldly is choosing to show up fully, even when it's uncomfortable. It's saying yes to the things that scare you because you know they lead to a stronger version of you. The Stoic path isn't paved with ease. It demands you walk into discomfort willingly. Boldness doesn't mean fearlessness. It means full presence despite fear. To live boldly is to speak truth when silence is easier, to take action when procrastination is tempting, and to remain kind when bitterness feels justified. This kind of courage isn't flashy, it's steady. It's the quiet power of someone who chooses to embody their values day after day. Every bold move rewrites your identity. Every moment of courage reminds you that you're not here to merely exist, you're here to live wide, deep, and free. The Stoics would urge us to remember that time is our most limited resource. Each bold choice is a reclaiming of time, an active step away from a life of regret. Living boldly means you're no longer waiting for permission to be who you are. You don't outsource your authenticity to trends, titles, or others' approval. You know what matters, and you act accordingly. That is Stoic boldness, not the absence of fear, but the presence of purpose.
Fear is not your enemy. It's a mirror, a signal, a spark. It will either drive your decisions or be driven by your discipline. You can either shrink back or step up. You can either let fear control your path or use it as rocket fuel toward your greatest evolution. Make no mistake, fear will always be there. But now, you know what to do with it. Subscribe if this resonated. Share this with someone who needs the reminder. And remember, the fear you feel today is the gate to your power tomorrow.